When it comes to the biggest stars in professional wrestling, The Rock is at the top of the list. He's captivated audiences with his electrifying charisma and immense talent. The Great One easily stood out as one of the most interesting wrestlers of the late 90s and was considered the secondary to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hell, some believed he surpassed him. Do I? No, but in the world of entertainment, that's a different story. With The Rock being who he was in the squared circle, it also lended him opportunities on TV shows and commercials. By 2000, he was a household name and was set to embark on a transition that on paper seemed like a huge, daunting challenge. Many wrestlers have come and gone. They tried their hand at Hollywood but failed. Hulk Hogan was amongst one of those names, and little did everyone know that The Rock was going to be the most successful. What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Now, I wanted to make this video ever since I finished the WrestleMania 21. I talked a bit about Rock's departure, and I actually wanted to do it last week. I owed you guys a long-ass video, so I decided, no, let's do it as the next video. It's very similar to the Brock Lesnar one I made a year ago. Some of you guys may remember that. You know, I talked about his departure, how he almost signed with WWE and whatnot. It's very similar to that, so I just wanted to give you guys an idea. That said, let's get into it. After featuring in The Mummy Returns and starring in the subsequent prequel, The Scorpion King, and it seemed like WWE was slowly losing one of their biggest stars. Rock alone was a huge blow to the product because nobody had that flashiness to them, and to make matters worse, Stone Cold Steve Austin was gone. Unlike Austin, Rock's movie commitments were keeping him away, but it didn't stop him from making occasional appearances. Hell, he even had an entire heel run based on this, and it was so successful that the fans couldn't stop hating The Rock, and he was back to being a face. His Hollywood commitments were slowly dragging him away more often, and at this point he was essentially a part-timer. WrestleMania 20 was coming up and he was set to return once more, but instead of facing John Cena as rumored at the time, he teamed up with Mick Foley. They lost and Rock was back to making appearances every once in a while. It's like he's away, but at the same time he's very close, and that's the feeling I get throughout his career. As the fall of 2004 was winding down, it had also become apparent that the Great One's contract was set to expire. During the summer, he had made it apparent that he still wanted to return to the squared circle so he could whoop candy asses, and around the end of the year, plans for WrestleMania were being developed. Back then, they had an idea of who's main eventing in November and whatnot, and one thing that was for sure, at least from others' perspective, was that The Rock was coming to the Staples Center. But around the Royal Rumble time, things took a turn. Now, everyone that reads up on the news sites believed Rock extended his contract around the summer. This was something that was mentioned around the end of August of 2004, but it had finally become apparent that the higher-ups probably didn't even think about it. Sources are claiming that there have been ongoing issues between Vince McMahon and The Rock over the past few days over contract issues. The Rock, despite going off to Hollywood, still has a WWE contract, and this is where The Rock's issue lies. He's unhappy that Vince McMahon hasn't yet made an offer to renew it. Interestingly enough, part of The Rock's contract determines whether he can use that name in his movie credits. Until this problem is resolved, The Rock's proposed WrestleMania appearance is in the air right now, and a source close to The Rock thinks he won't even be at WrestleMania. Dwayne's name, The Rock, was given to him by Vince, and this had been mentioned in an interview with Howard Stern. There wasn't much details on the conditions and whatnot, and the reports themselves were mixed around here. Some believed there was a chance of a renewal, while others had a lot of doubts. Regardless, the situation was interesting. Then it kicked up a bit. It has now come to light that The Rock wanted his opponent at WrestleMania to be none other than Sting. However, Rock and McMahon are still in discussion over contract issues, and until this is resolved, The Rock appearing at WrestleMania looks increasingly unlikely. There is a suggestion that the contract negotiations are stalling because McMahon wants to show The Rock that he doesn't need him as badly as The Rock may think. Steve Austin's arrival back in the picture may also have a lot to do with McMahon's sudden change of attitude. Now, Austin at the time was back after a year, and in other places, the star power was slowly increasing. So I guess from their perspective, they got tough about it. It's like, why do we need you? When in reality, he would make them a little more money. On this whole matter, The Rock told the Wrestling Observer, "The company and I are at an odd crossroad." It was an oddly quiet ending without any interaction or communication from the front office or the old man. Surprising to say the least, especially after 8 years. This was after they allowed his contract to expire on December 31st, 2004. The relationship wasn't no screw you, I'm gone or whatever. It was just odd, and I'll get into that in a moment. At the same time, the WWE was working on a movie division. They started off with playing a part in The Walking Tall, and 2004 was also the same year where they were stepping it up. Kane was going to star in See No Evil. Stone Cold was initially set to star in The Marine, but regardless, he was eventually going to have his own movie, and at the time, this was very noticeable. John Cena was becoming a main guy who was going to be in The Marine. And The Rock, he wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in this. They've been wanting for a long time to get into the movie business, and I'm not too sure. I think like low budget movies, a lot of them straight to video, I think they wanted to and were looking for different distributors. Then speculation on the reasoning of Rock's contract expiring led to some believing that Triple H played a part. The Rock and the Game's relationship was competitive ever since they were brought up together. Each man wanted to top the other, and some believe that since Rock was doing more in the movies, Triple H, he was jello. Is this true? I don't know, but one thing for certain is that Rawk thought some in the locker room were jealous of his success, saying in an interview back in 2004, "I don't get that from the entire crew, just from a handful of guys who, interestingly enough, are at the top now." Rawk says, "But most guys are genuinely excited. They come up to me and they're like, 'Yeah, I saw the rundown, congratulations.' But you're going to get negativity from some people. That's just the nature of this business." Back to the topic at hand. Rawk, he wasn't mad, even more so disappointed by how things went. And he showed this in his interview with IGN. "Well, contractually, my contract was up. It came and went last year, at the end of the year last year, and it was an interesting way it all came out. I wasn't contacted or notified or anything like that, and it wasn't until my own team had basically congratulated me saying, 'Oh my God, what a wonderful career you've had. Congratulations.' It's like, really, it's done? I wish it would have gone down a bit different, and for that part, I'm sad about it." And on the topic of contract renewal, it was never brought up. It was claimed that John Laurinaitis screwed up the contract renewal, but nobody really believes this, and if it had some truth to it, Rawk would have mentioned it. And remember what I said about the relationship being odd? It was that because on Raw, they were showing the Grey One in the new movie Be Cool. The New York Daily reported that while The Rock's contract expired, Vince McMahon apologized to him and was trying to get the Grey One back. There was even a chance of The Rock making it in time for WrestleMania, but by the following week, it was over and he confirmed that he will not appear at the show. I don't know why this is funny to me, but apparently Jeff Jarrett reached out to him over potentially doing something with TNA. It just sounds random, and Rawk didn't even turn them down. But he obviously couldn't sign with them because they were far out of his pay grade, and plus, WWE did so much for him. The heat between the two sides didn't last for long, as at the WrestleMania after party, The Rock and Vince McMahon patched things up. He obviously wasn't going to sign with them because he was far too busy, but was open to anything in the future if his schedule allowed it. All was good. They started showing him in Doom, and at one point in September of 2005, they asked him if he'd like to appear on a special episode of Raw, that being the Homecoming episode. He of course declined. Others were looking ahead for WrestleMania 22, and somebody from FreezeDriedMovies.com decided to ask him that question. They also asked him about a claim that he was never going to step in the ring to wrestle again. Really? I never said that. It was a misquote. But WrestleMania? No, probably not. Maybe an appearance. And as far as wrestling, I love that. And I love that live crowd interaction. But I got into movies to grow professionally and become good at what I was doing. And it was all about that for me. He followed up with a WWE.com interview talking positively about the company and showing interest in a match with Sting and even Rey Mysterio. There wasn't much rumblings in the world of professional wrestling as it relates to The Rock. He had grown back his hair and was looking like he's from 2002. And on the other side, HBK revealed that his request of a match with The Rock at WrestleMania, I assume 22, because this interview was in early 2006, was declined. This of course stemmed from the rivalry in the past. Add to that, Shawn Michaels spoke badly about The Rock's grandmother, so there was some heat there. Other than some minor interviews, The Rock never showed up until a March 12, 2007 episode of Raw. He appeared via satellite and trashed Mr. McMahon, who was feuding with Donald Trump. The fans were excited to see him, but the moment of seeing him in the squared circle was far from being a reality. 2007 was mostly a successful year, and it was basically the year where The Rock elevated his status. So naturally, he won't be able to appear, and that's exactly what happened. The 15th anniversary show, he was not there. But the one thing he was able to make it to was the 2008 Hall of Fame induction ceremony. This had to do with his father, Rocky Johnson, being inducted along with his grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia. Even then, there was some drama involving him. For one, The Rock went far too long in his speech inducting his father, which took some time away from the marquee inductee, Ric Flair. And a wrestler told the Torch, "This wasn't a roast. This was supposed to be a tribute to his dad and grandfather, and instead, he did an hour plus of comedy, running way long, then did a short tribute to his dad and grandfather, then left. It was rude of him." Reports stem that Rock came in late for a ceremony and left after his speech. He was above everyone, apparently, but I'll get to that soon. Later that night, Triple H took a jab at him talking about how he doesn't come close to Ric Flair's flashiness and the fans booed him. And about that report about how the wrestlers were pissed, yeah, it was apparently blown out of proportion. And it wasn't the wrestlers on the roster that had an issue, it was mostly some of the higher-ups, with some of the guys who wanted to align with them saying the same thing. John Cena was one of those men that had an issue with The Rock as well, talking about how Rock claimed he's never leaving and loving this business, and he doesn't want to show that by coming to the show, raising his eyebrow and whatnot. As time went on, The Rock's star power was increasing, as were his chances of making a return. He may have dropped the Rock name in Hollywood back in 2008, but he was never better before. He appeared on the SmackDown 10th anniversary show and said in a radio interview, "I love that world of being able to entertain, especially if I could go back and it's on SmackDown and do a promo or guest host where we could create this cool show, whatever that may be," Johnson said. "Especially now, I'm at the point where I can go back and give back to the fans and help out guys in any way I can. Right now, we're trying to put together, there's always something cool and interesting for me to do. I would like to do something more than just host the show, and I'm in the process of creating something really cool for the fans, something very special and unique." It will be something like one big entertaining show. But the day for the appearance, the guest host appearance, because WWE was constantly asking him, they're like, oh, can you guest host? No. Can you guest host? No. It was being pushed back. At one point, the other guys, which starred Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, featured on Raw back in August of 2010 to promote the other guys. And as you may know, The Rock was in that movie and had a hilarious moment where he aimed for the bushes. But they didn't acknowledge that. They didn't acknowledge the fact that he was even in the movie, which was bizarre. It was weird. Nonetheless, there was something far more interesting in store for The Rock's return a few months later. Alright, so that's it for this video. I really love making these kinds of videos. I don't do them that often, but when I do them, I just like them. This is one of those videos I enjoyed. It was something different, something I haven't done in a while. Rock, his star power just grew. It's as simple as that. And obviously, he could have appeared here and there, but it's better that he waited for 7 years. It was the biggest movie star at the time. He was going to star in Fast 5, and it was the perfect time for him to return. He didn't need them, and it was just nice, Like, obviously, I wish we could have seen HBK versus The Rock, WrestleMania 22, but it is what it is. He became a big star. He wasn't taking those bumps in Hollywood, so he was better off. Alright, what do you guys think of The Rock's departure in 2004? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the people's elbow on the like button, or perhaps the rock bottom on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.